which is Two Nights of Vaudeville.
Directed by, we don't know.
Unknown. Some unknown director for Ebony Films, which was one of the Jacksonville, Florida film studios.
Mm-hmm.
This is a white-owned film studio that is making films with black actors for black audiences in segregated Nickelodeons. But I thought it was interesting in this movie trying to parse out how much of this is kind of talking or is making fun of black people versus trying to engage with them as an audience in a good faith way, I guess.
Right. I mean, it apparently did get some flack at the time for how it's very broad, and it definitely perpetuates a lot of negative stereotypes, and that was apparent enough at the time that it it got some pushback. So it is the sort of thing where watching it now, it definitely feels very, over exaggerated stereotypes, and it's like, oof, this is a little. It gets a little uncomfortable at points, though not nearly as bad as the movie that we're going to talk about later in the show.
Which one's that?
But it is interesting to see like what was being marketed towards a black audience at the time.
Yeah.
Which we haven't seen much of.
Yeah, I assume that Elise Guy's movie, oh my god, what was it called? A Fool and His Money, might have been marketed toward black audiences. Similar to that movie, this one has an all-black cast, and now that I think about it, has any movie had like a black character who doesn't speak in a stereotyped garbage for that we've seen so far?
I mean, like people in blackface in the Italian movies, maybe.
Oh yeah,
like
they don't know what they're Italian. They don't even know what black people are.
That's like the closest thing I think we've gotten to like non-exaggerated, like caricaturized language.
Right.
Yeah,
it's this one's got a intertitle. It's like, to give you an idea of what it sounds like, it's like, yes, am lieben hier right now, as he's getting kicked out of a theater. Gross.
Yeah.
I mean, the basic setup of this, I think it's kind of interesting. Like it's trying to, in one way, it's trying to like dignify the idea of a black space, but in another way is maybe contributing to an idea of segregation, which is something that was being considered at this time. It's two black guys who find some kind of vaudeville theater tickets on the ground, and they go into the vaudeville show and they start acting really rowdy inside of the show. Part of it is just showing the vaudeville acts to waste time, I guess. And they end up getting kicked out after they go on stage, and they decide to start their own vaudeville show for black people, and then they do that, and so a lot of it is like, a lot of the movie is featuring the different vaudeville acts that they are watching at the various stages, but that's sort of the framing device.
I mean, I do like the premise of it, other than the sort of like slight implication that black people shouldn't be invited into white vaudeville theaters.
Yeah.
It's like, but I like, in general, I like movies about people who are refused something and then decide to like do their own version of it, kind of.
They say, I'm gonna make my own vaudeville theater with blackjack and hookers. In fact, forget the vaudeville theater.
I had that joke in the back of my head, but I wasn't gonna just blatantly steal from Bender from Futurama.
It's called a reference. All right.
But yeah, I mean, like that. I don't know. I find that concept. There are a lot of movies made about that kind of thing, and I always find it compelling and kind of inspiring.
Yeah. I think if you take the politics out of it, it's a pretty, inspiring movie.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to view it that way in any sort of contemporary context, but I think that was probably its intent, was sort of like, at least I hope that was its intent, was sort of a story of people who were kicked out of a sort of an established theater, and then their love of it do their own thing. Although it is also, the movie ends with the audience that they invite to their show hating their show and throwing stuff at them, and then being like, well, I guess that didn't work.
That's true. I forgot about that. Yeah.